welcome to Medical Dialogues, your daily dose of health and medical news. I'm Mr. Zaman, and here is what I bring to you all from the world of medicine. How high blood viscosity can predict mortality factors in COVID-19 patients. The large-scale study is the first to evaluate blood viscosity in the prediction of mortality in COVID-19 patients. A simple calculation of blood viscosity was more robust in the identification of hospitalized patients at risk for dying from COVID-19 complications when compared to common measures of inflammation and the blood clotting biomarker D-dimer. The study is published in Journal of the American College of Cardiology. Researchers looked at records of 5,621 COVID-19 patients from 6 hospitals in the Mount Sinai Health System between February 27, 2020 and November 27, 2021. All had clinical and laboratory verified diagnosis of COVID-19 and were identified within 48 hours of hospitalization and followed until hospital discharge or death. Hospitalized patients who had high blood viscosity had a 60% higher death rate, with blood viscosity measured under high flow conditions such as the arteries, and 32% higher mortality with blood viscosity measured at low flow such as the microcirculation, blood circulation in the smallest vessels, than patients with a low blood viscosity. So, blood viscosity is elevated by acute phase reactants like fibrinogen, macroglobulins that have been associated with acute COVID-19 infections. Blood viscosity is an integrated measure of these acute phase reactants and the cellular components that can increase during infection. When the blood viscosity is high, physicians may consider therapeutic heparin for patients' hydration or intensification of glucocorticoids to lessen the severity of the acute phase response to COVID-19. This study demonstrates the importance for checking the blood viscosity in COVID-19 patients early in hospital admission, which is easily obtained through routine lab work. Results can help determine the best treatment course for at-risk patients and help improve outcomes, the researchers concluded. Cardiovascular health and stroke, their relationships with risk factors. Genes and lifestyle factors together play a role in stroke risk. However, even for people at high risk for stroke, adopting a healthy cardiovascular lifestyle may significantly lower the risk of stroke in their lifetime, according to the new research published in the Journal of the American Heart Association, an open access peer-reviewed journal of the American Heart Association. For the study, researchers reviewed data from the Atherosclerosis Risk in Communities or ARIC study, a community-based study of more than 11,500 white and black adults over the age of 45 who had no history of stroke at enrollment. Study participants were followed for 28 years, 45% were men and 55% were women. Researchers estimated the lifetime risk of a first stroke according to levels of genetic risk based on a stroke polygenic risk score. Polygenic risk scores were derived from over 3 million genetic variants or single nucleotide polymorphisms across the whole genome. The number of single nucleotide polymorphisms related to stroke was standardized at more than 2.7 million for white adults and more than 2.2 million single nucleotide polymorphisms for black adults. The researchers investigated the potential impact of the American Heart Association's Life Simple 7 recommendations and whether higher Life Simple 7 cardiovascular score equating to better cardiovascular health lessened the negative impact of a high genetic score on the lifetime risk of stroke. Researchers found that at age 45, study participants with the lowest polygenic risk scores had the lowest lifetime risk of stroke, which is 9.6%. The lifetime risk of stroke was 13.8% for participants with an intermediate polygenic risk score and 23.2% for participants with a high polygenic risk score. Those with both high genetic risk for stroke and low cardiovascular health had the highest lifetime risk of stroke score of 24.8%. Participants who had a high polygenic risk and optimal cardiovascular health were observed to mitigate their lifetime risk of stroke by up to 43% compared to those with inadequate cardiovascular health. This translated into about 6 additional years without a stroke. Researchers ended that this was the first step in using genetic information to identify people who may be at a higher risk for stroke, and also in motivating people to make lifestyle changes for cardiovascular disease prevention. This type of study showed the responsibilities for the future. How tears can help in being a better diagnostic markers that might help in predicting diseases. According to a new study, doctors say that someday tears can be put to good use. In ACS Nano, researchers report a nanomembrane system that harvests and purifies tiny blobs called exosomes from tears, allowing researchers to quickly analyze them for disease biomarkers. Dubbed as iTEARS, the platform could enable more efficient and less invasive molecular diagnosis for many diseases and conditions without relying solely on symptoms. Tears are well suited for sample collection because the fluid can be collected quickly and non-invasively, though only tiny amounts can be harvested at a time. So researchers wondered if a nanomembrane system which they originally developed for isolating exosomes from urine and plasma could allow them to quickly obtain these vesicles from tears and then analyze them for disease biomarkers. The team modified their original system to handle the low volume of tears. The new system, called Incorporated Tear Exosome Analysis via Rapid Isolation System or iTEARS, separated out exosomes in just 5 minutes by filtering tear solutions over nanoporous membranes with an oscillating pressure flow to reduce clogging. Proteins from the exosomes could be tagged with fluorescent probes while they were still on the device and then transferred to other instruments for further analysis. Nucleic acids were also extracted from the exosomes and analyzed. The researchers successfully distinguished between healthy controls and patients with various types of dry eye disease based on a proteomic assessment of extracted proteins. Similarly, iTEARS enables researchers to observe differences in microRNAs between patients with diabetic retinopathy and those that didn't have the eye condition, suggesting that the system could help track disease progression. The team says that this work could lead to a more sensitive, faster, and less invasive molecular diagnosis of various diseases using only tears. How physical activities impact thinking in men and women. Studies have shown that physical and mental activity help preserve thinking skills and delay dementia. A new study suggests that these benefits may vary for men and women. The study was published in July 20th, 2022, online issue of Neurology, the medical journal of the American Academy of Neurology. The study looked at the effects of physical and mental activities such as reading, going to classes, or playing cards or games on cognitive reserve in the areas of thinking, speed, and memory. Cognitive reserve is the buffer that occurs when people have strong thinking skills, even when their brains show signs of the underlying changes associated with cognitive impairment and dementia. The study involved 758 people with an average age of 76 years. Some had no thinking or memory problems, some had mild cognitive impairment, and some had dementia. The participants had brain scars and took thinking speed and memory tests. To calculate cognitive reserve, people's thinking test scores were compared against the changes in the brain associated with dementia, such as the total volume of the hippocampus, a key brain region impacted by Alzheimer's disease. People were also asked about their usual weekly physical activity. For mental activity, they were asked whether they participated in 3 types of activities in the past 13 months, that is, reading magazines, newspapers or books, going to classes, and playing card games or bingo. They were given 1 point for each type of activity for a maximum of 3 points. For mental activity, participants averaged 1.4 points. For physical activity, participants took in an average of at least 15 minutes per week of activities that elevated heart rates, such as brisk walking and biking. Researchers also looked at whether the relationship between physical and mental activities and cognitive reserve was affected by the gene that carries the strongest risk for Alzheimer's, called APOE epsilon 4. They found that for women, having the gene lessens the effects of the beneficial relationship between physical and mental activities and cognitive reserve. The study does not prove that physical and mental activities help improve cognitive reserve. It only shows an association between the two. That's all for today. Stay tuned to Medical Dialogues for latest updates.
Never miss a medical update from Medical Dialogues. Like, subscribe, and press the bell icon.